So I've seen you've written some of the books. Like there's this book titled The Nagoye Tree. I found it most intriguing. So could you tell us a bit about it?
So the Nagoye Tree came about in a very interesting way. Kampala is a colonial city.
Yes.
And so the public spaces that are even there were made from the colonial point of view. But if we go back before we were occupied by the British, what were our public spaces? And a lot of those public spaces were trees. And so that's where the seed of the idea came in. So, and then what was the purpose of these public spaces and these trees? They were places where people congregated and met. They were places where our histories and our stories and our folk tales were told. And so even that now contributes to, like, now I want to tell the story of a public space, but that story is within the context of folklore or folktale or myth or legend.
Are you interested in theatre, storytelling, scriptwriting? Join us today as we interview an incredible young man whose passion and love for storytelling has led him to big platforms and spaces. Lloyd Lutara, welcome to The Author's Mind.
Thank you, I'm happy to be here.
I've seen you write books like The Nagoye Tree, The Rope, and then script writing. I've seen some of your scripts.
Yes.
Which work do you do that? Which type of piece have you written that you feel more connected to? In terms of when you're writing, what do you prefer? Do you prefer writing the books or the script writing?
I would say the books. I think the main reason for that being is that the book can stand and be consumed on its own. It is in and of itself a piece of art. But a script is just the first piece in a long line of steps to a completed piece of art.
Wow.
So a script, even once you finish a script, you then have to now, if it's a theater piece, put together an entire theater production. And then that is when it is, once people are in the theater watching it on stage, that's when it is complete. Even with a television show or a film, like right now, I'm writing a film.
Yes.
And I am just at the earliest of stages because I'm like, okay, I'll finish it in the next couple of months, but then after that, I now have to start thinking about how am I going to get it made? I need to now start looking for producers, and producers need to start looking for money. And then I need to start thinking about actors, and then I have to start thinking about crew. And then we have to think about now shooting it, and then after shooting it is editing it, and then after editing it, and it's now a finished product, it's not yet finished until it is in front of an audience, and you have to figure out where we're going to put it where people can watch it.
So you feel like the process is much longer?
It's much
script
longer.
Writing?
Yes.
Yet a novel, you just get a book and you get the story there and then.
Yeah, and you get the story there and then.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So where do you usually derive your characters? Are they somewhere connected to yourself, or you create some of the characters when you're writing?
I think it is, I don't know who said it, but basically the saying is that every creative creates from the clay of their own lives. And so you can't avoid picking from your own life because we all see the world through the lens of our own lives.
Yeah.
But I think it's a combination of the two. I think when I know I have a story and there's a story I want to tell. It is then finding and designing, actually quite literally designing the right characters to tell that story. So if I'm, for example, if I am telling the story, if I want to say the subject matter is masculinity,
Yes.
I need to already know my main character probably has to be a man. It doesn't make sense to talk about masculinity and have a main character being a woman.
True.
Then I have to say, okay, what does his relationship with masculinity look like? And again, I have to look at what angle am I looking at the subject matter. But basically, long story short, it is I need to construct the characters and design the characters to match the story that I'm trying to tell.
Oh,
Yeah.
So I've seen you've written some of the books. Like there's this book titled The Nagoye Tree. I found it most intriguing. So could you tell us a bit about it?
So the Nagoye Tree came about in a very interesting way. I happened to be part of a residency called Vivid Synergies, which was hosted and started by Afri Art Gallery here in Uganda.
Wow.
And basically the residency its goal was to put together a writer and a visual artist, and they come up with pieces of work. And the visual artist is meant to, at the other side of the residency, come up with an exhibition, and the writer was meant to come up with a book.
Yes.
And so we sat down, and the visual artist was very much interested in, first of all, is professionally an architect and an urban designer.
Okay.
And one of her interests was the idea of public spaces in especially Kampala, or the lack thereof public spaces, or the disappearing of public spaces, or the mismanagement of public spaces, just the idea of public spaces. And I was like, this is very, very interesting. And that led me down the trail of Kampala is a colonial city.
Yes.
And so the public spaces that are even there were made from the colonial point of view. But if we go back before we were occupied by the British, what were our public spaces? And a lot of those public spaces were trees. And so that's where the seed of the idea came in. So, and then what was the purpose of these public spaces and these trees? They were places where people congregated and met. They were places where our histories and our stories and our folk tales were told. And so even that now contributes to, like, now I want to tell the story of a public space, but that story is within the context of folklore or folktale or myth or legend.
Wow.
And so it sort of evolved from there over time. And then, it went from that, I guess you could say, one point to the next, to the next, to the next.
That's where it was birthed from.
That's where it was birthed from.
Wow, I love the idea because it's so out of normal thinking. I love that you brought the African bit in it. And noticed you have a good eye for art. So could you explain where that eye came from? Like why you have a specific type of art you love in most of the books and most of the pieces of yours I've seen. So why do you choose such type of art? Something like this. It's a bit dramatized.
Yeah.
You know?
I think, again, it's very interesting. When I was growing up, and it's now a whole fusion of things, but when I was growing up, even now, I'm a huge comic book fan. Yes, I watch a lot of anime, even up to now. And even the books I read when I was young, you would find they would have illustrations in them. And so essentially now, like going back to the Nagoye Tree, one of my biggest influences on the type of story, even though I very much rooted it in our culture and our folk tales, were books like Alice in Wonderland and Lord of the Rings and the Chronicles of Narnia and books like that. And all those books, they had very rich illustrations attached to them.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to create a book like that. And I think also one of the things that led to me approaching the book that I did, the way I did, was I was having a conversation with a niece and nephew of mine, the twins. They're called John and Jemima, and actually the book is dedicated to them.
Oh yeah, I saw something.
Yes,
like...
yes. And I was having a conversation with them, and their mother is also trying to encourage them to read. They're, I think, about 11 years old now. And I asked them about the books they were reading. They told me, and I told them. And the thing was, their books were, again, very Western. Yeah. Because again, there are very few books that are written by us, for us, and especially for our youngsters.
Yes.
So I told them, you know what, that's great, but I'm going to write you guys a book.
Oh, so sweet of
yes.
you.
And so that came up. But then also, in addition to that, this book is, again, for my 10-year-old self. It's for myself at 10. Like, it's the book I wished I had when I was 10 years old, that reflected me completely. Wow. Because at that time, most of the books I was reading, they had white characters living a certain kind of life that I did not relate to one at all. Yeah. And so I'm like, this is not good. And we need stories that we can all relate to us, and with characters that look like us, that talk like us, that behave like us, in a world that we recognize.
Yeah, that's the importance of African literature. So that we're able to relate to our stories and way of life of African people.
Yeah,
that's beautiful. So at what age did you start screenwriting?
Screenwriting, I would say it was very interesting. I was screenwriting specifically. I think I was in my late teens, I would say. But here's the caveat on that. Even from when I was 13,
yes,
what I would do is, and this is now like an O-level upwards, what I would do was write scripts and make my friends act in them.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I would do. So I would say writing scripts, that's what I was doing from when I was 13 years old. But I started writing stories at 8 years old. And even again, throughout high school, what would happen was I would write stories and people would book the pages ahead of time.
Oh my God.
So that they could read them. And so, because I had my notebook, but people were like, no, we can't wait for you to finish. Just tear out the pages, and the pages would go around. And then also in addition to that, and sort of coming back to character a bit,
yes,
and how I feel, because a lot of people, I've been told this, that my characters feel genuine and lived in and sound like real people. And I think that a part of that comes from, in high school, what I would do was other students would come to me and pay me to write letters to their girlfriends for them. God.
I feel like every African typical writer has actually gone through what you're just saying right now.
And what I would have to do is, if it is, say, Alex wants me to write a letter to his girlfriend.
Yes.
I would have to write as Alex.
So you'd put yourself in
Alex's shoes,
and
yes, write as Alex. The way that he talks, the way that he would write, the things that he would talk about to his girlfriend, all of those things. So I had to, I had to do that.
It looks like writing has always been a part of you, and I love hearing you know. I feel like most writers started at a young age, which is so beautiful. So over the years, what values have you gotten as a writer that you feel like a young writer should have by the time they reach your stage?
I think first and foremost, patience and persistence.
Yeah.
Yeah, patience
Very
and
important.
persistence.
Very
And that is
important.
not even just in the sense of the journey of the career.
Yes.
Even when you're sitting down to write something, you need patience and you need perseverance. And you need a plan. Because oftentimes you can sit down and you think just because you get an idea in your head, you can sit down and write it immediately.
Yes.
And that's not necessarily the case. And I think if one tries to run or write or create on inspiration alone, they can run out of steam. And also writing when inspiration hits, you can run out of steam. I think that having a plan and saying, okay, and also I've found that the first version of an idea is usually not the best version of an idea.
Really?
Yes, you need to work on it and you need to design it and you need to water it and you need to present it to people and get their feedback and do all of these things. You need to, and you see how oftentimes you hear some writers saying that writing often feels like giving birth.
Yes, I've heard it a lot.
Yes. But the thing is, pregnancy is 9 months. The baby has to grow inside of you before you can give birth to it.
Okay, you bring it from that perspective.
Yes.
Because I think what I've always understood is, I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong, but the first time you have an idea, especially when you're not stressed, that one time where something comes into your head, I want to maybe start a business. What can I start? Usually that first idea is brilliant. It's just that maybe you've not yet given it legs and hands. It's just a body or it's just an egg. You've not yet birthed it out properly. But I usually feel like the first idea is the best because it's original. It's just come from a very relaxed version of you. I feel like the second, third ideas usually come out of strain because you're like, oh my God, no, I need to do this. I really need to start that business. So where are the things? So you come for maybe a shortcut. Okay, from my perspective.
No, I know it's actually absolutely valid because I do think there are moments where lightning strikes.
Yes.
And you see, I think what I do think is that the core idea can be brilliant. But you still, sort of like you said, you need to give it legs.
Yes.
And as you give it legs, it evolves and it grows. And so I feel like we're saying the same thing just in a different way. But that's the whole thing. It's like, I'll give an example with the Nagoye Tree, since we've talked about it quite a bit. The basic story is this young woman who is meant to become the oracle of her community. But she's very impatient.
Yes.
And she makes a mistake that threatens the livelihood of her entire community. And then she has to go on a journey to earn who she's eventually meant to become. And that journey is also to try and fix the mistake that she made. Now, the very first version of that character, it's still her essentially, the core of her, but the way I saw her in her mind, because I was not yet seeing her clearly, she was basically, essentially, a carbon copy of Shuri from Black Panther.
Okay, yes, it is.
Yes.
Yes.
So you see, but what I mean in terms of the way she looked, her mannerisms, the way she talked, everything.
Her character.
Her character. But you see, that fiery spirit still is in Nagoye, but now you cannot put Shuri and Nagoye together and say Nagoye is just a copy of Shuri.
Yeah,
I've
'cause-
made her own thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's also different.
She's
in her
also
own
different,
way.
but that fiery spirit, that intelligence is still there.
Okay. So, oh, you're very smart. I would like you to explain what is your perspective on self-awareness. How can you bridge self-awareness to your craft?
That's a very interesting question.
Yes.
I think part of self-awareness is self-betterment, and not just trying to better yourself as a creative.
Yes.
I think actually bettering yourself as a human being is more important than trying to better yourself as a creative, because one actually feeds the other.
Yes.
But again, if you're also trying to better yourself in every aspect of your life, it also comes down to your craft as well. But I think a big part of it is consuming art is a huge, huge thing. I think you can't create art if you don't consume it. And as you're consuming it, asking yourself questions about it, not even just studying the thing. Because I think oftentimes the best art, even though they stand in and of themselves and they're amazing, they say something about you.
They do. They do.
And so if you find yourself being drawn to certain pieces of art, your first question should be, why? You know?
Yeah.
What is it about this story that I'm drawn to? I'll give an example. I had the privilege of teaching a script writing class at a high school. It ran for 10 weeks and had a couple of several students there, and I've sort of taken that model from that and implemented it otherwhere in other places. But my first question in my first session with them was, what are the last 2 things you watched, read, or listened to that blew your mind, inspired you, made you stop and think, this is amazing? And then the next question was, why do you think that is? And what I found almost with everyone, and I've tried it with other people as well, and I ask myself this question, is that there is a direct connection between what they are consuming and why they enjoyed it and what is going on in their lives.
True.
Yeah, so
True.
I found that one of the students, she was drawn to stories about sisters and sibling relationships. And so she was very much drawn to like Emily Bronte and the Bronte sisters and their stories and books and whatnot, as well as other stories. And but the common thread was that. Then as we talked more, it became very clear to me that she had a very complex relationship with her older sister. And that is why, because she saw herself and her sister in these stories.
Yes.
And then another student, he was drawn to stories of loss and trying to work through the process of grief and those things and how to get through that. And I became aware that he had recently lost his grandmother. And so he was trying to figure out how to process his grief. That's why he was drawn to stories about processing of grief.
Yes.
And so when you look at that, it's like, oh, that is, you can look at it in the moment, but also in general terms. What kind of stories are you drawn to generally? What kind of art are you drawn to? Do you love? And it can give you an indicator of what kind of artist you should be.
Or what type of
person you are. Yeah.
And what type of person you can be.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
That is so beautiful. Personally, I find myself getting attracted to movies about slavery. And it's not like I'm going through any form of slavery. I just don't know. I just love such movies about the old times, or films where, I've watched Roots over and over again, and sometimes my mom is like, "But why do you like watching such things? They're so traumatizing. We don't want people to be beaten and killed." I'm like, I don't know. I just feel their pain. And a psychologist once said sometimes it's inner child issues that maybe you're dealing with that relates. I'm not going to choose a movie without being related to it. So I totally get that. Yeah. So Lloyd, what have you ever done in your life that has excited you to the roof? One thing you've done that is outside your comfort zone, outside reading, writing, the art of your art, that has excited you so much.
That's a good question. Because I like being in my comfort zone quite a bit. However, what I'll say is, and this is the interesting thing, I like within my comfort zone, pushing myself within my comfort zone. So when I say for example, I'm like any piece that I'm working on.
Yes.
I go into it, and the truth is, it is just a little bit out of what my current abilities are.
Yes.
As a creative. And that what that requires means I have to figure out how to do it, but it means I have to do a lot of reading, I have to do a lot of research, I have to do a lot of things. So, and in that regard, I end up going to places I've not been to before, end up talking to people I normally wouldn't talk to before. And for example, with the Nagoye Tree.
Yes.
There is a lot of the story of the Nagoye Tree and of Nagoye, the character, is based on the folktale of the Nagoye Tree. And do you know what the Nagoye Tree is?
Yes.
Yes. And so, because I was doing research, I had to go to Mubende and visit the tree.
Must have been a beautiful experience.
Exactly. So that's why, it's still within the writing, but it took me to an experience where I had to go and experience this tree. Have you been there?
No, but I would love to actually have experienced that myself.
Yeah, but of course, the Nagoye Tree is said to be one of the oldest still living trees in Uganda.
And it has, I think, a healing something.
Yes, it has supposed to have healing properties. Yes. It has different compartments to visit different ancestors.
Yes.
And it is huge. It is huge. It's probably half the size of this room.
Are you serious?
The trunk, around, and you can go around in each compartment. So going there, visiting it, seeing the people who visit it, talking to the caretaker who's there, and the stories that the caretaker has. That is very interesting. If I was not writing that is an experience I would have never had.
If you were not writing.
If I was not writing.
Okay, so this craft does give you experiences outside your space.
Yeah, outside of my space. I remember long time ago, And it ended up feeding into something I wrote much later. But I was part of a development team for a television series. And it was meant to be a medical series.
What television series?
It never came to air.
Okay.
But we did the development, but it was meant to center on a center for hospital.
Okay.
And so, but before we could sit down and write, the producer was like, you can't write a medical drama and about a community you are not aware of.
Oh, yes.
And so for about a month, it was just, we did an intensive workshop, which meant we had different medical specialists coming and talking to us about different things. We went out to different communities. We visited different places. And I think in that regard, one of the most interesting experiences was because one of the issues that the producer wanted to talk about in the series was internal human trafficking.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
It's an interesting story.
Yes. And that is actually, I think at that time, the figure was 85% of trafficking is internal trafficking.
So what challenges have you faced in this industry?
I think the biggest one, number one, has been being able to be myself.
Okay.
That is the biggest thing, where I am drawn to telling certain types of stories a certain way, with a certain aesthetic, and I am told that doesn't work.
They need a better way, or
not a better way, it's just that they don't quite, I don't want to say get it, but it is out because it is about outside of what they're used to.
yes.
They don't really see it. And so that has been the biggest challenge. And because of that, I've had to conform.
And that's not nice.
And it's not nice. And sort of make myself smaller.
Means you can't be truly authentic.
You can't be truly authentic in your work. But what I can say is there have been several people along the way that I've met who have seen me for who I am, and they have encouraged me, and they have taught me, and they have mentored me, and they have said, what you have is something special. The way you see the world is something special. The way you want to go about things is something special. And they pour into me. So I've had that opportunity. Yeah.
I personally have not been with you for long, but I've seen some of your work, and I believe people need to read and watch your work because it's a fresh voice, it's a fresh everything. It's not something you see every day.
Yeah.
And we need that. We need that. So don't dim your light.
Yeah, no, I
don't dim your sparkle.
Thank you for that. No, but no, I know, absolutely. And I think just the more experience I've gained, the more freedom I've also gained to be myself. And so I'm now in a position where I can say, I want to do this. And I can myself make it happen, or find people like, he has enough work behind him, but also he has a very noticeable and distinct style about him. So you also know if that is Lloyd and it's not your thing, you're not going to work with him.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't work with him, but you know, and so even me finding people to work with, I find people to work with who I'm on the same wavelength with.
Yeah, so it has helped you create a standard for your work.
Yes.
Like there is a Lloyd way of doing my work. So if you resonate with that, you come. If you can't,
if you,
then
it's okay. And
which is beautiful.
And it's okay. It's like, it's okay not to agree with people.
Yeah, it is.
And it's okay not to mesh with people because people are different.
Yeah.
I think the issues come when you think that your way is the only way, and that if someone doesn't adhere to that, they're wrong. And I don't think that, because there's a very specific way that I write and that I approach stories. And I think at a technical level, it can help people, because even that in that way, it is a way that I was also taught. And in that context, I saw how well it worked. So it only makes sense if a way works.
I think the beauty about being in a creative space is individuality,
Yeah.
or the fact that you can bring in anything.
Yeah.
So that rigid kind of thinking, I feel like the person doesn't understand creative space. Creative means different
Yeah.
every single time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just, I get it.
Yeah.
So you've been in this industry for 10 years. What do you think the Ugandan writing industry, or should I say specify, creative industry can do better to improve itself?
I think pay more attention to process.
Yes.
And it goes back to what we were saying about people, like how it's giving birth to a baby, and that it requires time.
Yes.
And I feel like there are we have beautiful stories.
We do.
We have people who want to do amazing things, and they have the opportunities to do those things. I think not oftentimes, but sometimes we can neglect that you need to put in the time to make something good. And I've found in more than one or two or three instances where people are rushing to the finish line. And realizing, going back to what I was saying about a script being just the first part of a very long journey, people want to jump to the end of the journey very quickly. But then even with a script, even scripting, creating a piece of writing in and of itself is quite a long journey as well.
Yeah, so in short, we should be patient enough.
Be patient enough
with everyone who is in the creative space,
Yes.
and with a journey in the
Yes.
creative space. And
and I think that, because I do see we have so many talented people.
Yeah, we do.
So many
We do.
passionate people.
We do.
So many amazing people who are thinking outside of the box and want to do amazing things.
Yeah.
But in a lot of cases, that doesn't translate into good work. And my question has always been, why? And I think part of it is not respecting the process, and that acknowledging that you need to take time to make something good.
And good things take time.
And good things
honestly.
take time. Yes, good things take
Good
time.
things take time. So you cannot rush good things.
Yeah.
And we need to be more patient as
Yeah.
Ugandans, as Africans, as people who love creatives.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, a basic example of that
Yeah.
is, say, when it comes to film or television, we are quite literally, in terms of time and experience, 100 years behind America and Hollywood.
Yeah, we are. We are.
And for us to expect just to jump to making Marvel type movies, for example, is unrealistic and unfair to think that.
Yeah, because we have, indirectly, what you're trying to say is we have our own journey,
Yes.
and we cannot keep looking at the West or looking at other countries.
Yeah.
Yet we have different systems, we have different economies, we have
Exactly.
different ways and different lifestyles and
Yeah.
cultures. So the way they do their things is different from
It's
ours,
different
and we
ours,
should
yeah.
embrace our way. It's beautiful.
Yes, exactly.
Beautiful.
And on top of that, it took a very long time
Yes.
for them to establish a multi-billion-dollar industry and to create the kind of quality films that they do.
You're right. You're right.
And yes, we have access to world-class technology and equipment and all of that, but having that is not enough.
It's not.
We need to respect the fact that we have our own process, an own journey to go on.
For them in 19s, when we were here suffering from slavery and all sorts of issues, they were being industrialized.
Yes.
So we cannot just be in the same.
We can't expect the same. Yeah.
So, what could you tell a young person, or younger you should I say, out there that wants to do writing, script writing, or generally join the creative space? What advice do you have for them?
I think a couple of things. And the beautiful thing about the internet, and the access to information that we have, is that we no longer have the excuse of we don't know. Everything is online.
Yes.
So I would say, one, you don't need to go to film school, for example, to learn. Things are online. You can learn how to write online. You can learn how to shoot online. You can learn how to do all these things online. Yes, real life experience helps, but you can get the basic information. But then also, once you learn, we walk around with supercomputers and cameras in our pockets.
All the time.
Every day. Write a script, grab a couple of friends, shoot it.
Yes.
Put it online.
I actually saw a behind the scenes on TikTok when they were using an iPhone 16 to make it. And I'm like, guys, you can have access to an iPhone 16.
You can.
Even a 14 or a 12 or a 13. Those can still work to make something out of it. So we are.
You can. I mean, I don't know what music video it was from last year.
Yes.
It was a music video of Usher's.
Yes.
And he shot it on a 15. I'm like, by the time Usher is shooting a music video,
with that iPhone that you can access.
iPhone that you can access, what excuse do you have?
You're very right. You're very right.
You know, and then the rest will come, I think. And I think that leads me to the next thing of, the more you make things, the more you write, the more you will find yourself and your voice and who you are, and find a place there. And I think that is the first major step. It's just go out there and do it. You have no excuse anymore.
True. Sadly, we've come to the end of this amazing episode with Lloyd Lutara. Thank you so much for honoring our invite.
Thank you for inviting me. I've had a good time. It's been a great conversation.
Yes, we hope to have you again with us. Sadly, we've come to the end of this amazing episode. Thank you so much, Lloyd, for honoring our invite and being here with us. In case you have any questions for Lloyd or for me or for the show, please put them in the comment section below. Like, follow, subscribe. We love hearing from you. This is it from me. My name is Jenny, and this is The Author's Mind.